All right. We are back at another episode of Warrior Week, Parables from the Pit. My special guest today is Derek Keller. Derek, welcome to the fucking show, bro.
Yeah, it's a little different out here.
Graduate of Warrior Week 35.
36.
36. And was there ever 36? Shit. All right, okay. Graduate of 36, and obviously you came back inside of the mix for the past 9 to 8 months. Almost a year now.
It's been, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, we're going to hear Derek's story, very interesting story about, you're going to find out. Welcome to the show. Sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of Parables from...
That's who you are!
All right, man. So we are back. Derek, talk to me, man, about the first time that you saw the videos, right? Where was your state of mind? I know a friend of yours already came to the inside of the program, a very close friend of yours already came inside of the program, or both of you guys came aware of it. I don't know. I think I was talking to both of you guys at the same time. Take me back to what actually took you to be even inside of a conversation to begin this journey, man.
So the thing that got me going was, like you said, the owner of the dealership that I work at, his brother went to Warrior Week 35. And before he even hit his Warrior Week, we were watching some of the videos and signing up. The video that actually grabbed me and changed the way that I felt, because the first video I watched was Garrett on the bridge, which I hear about a lot, about everybody had a big moment with that one. And that one really didn't do a lot for me because I was never really that playboy guy that had the money to go down and drive race cars and go to Vegas. So,
legit, man. That's a legit recognition.
So where it grabbed me is I started to research it a little bit because everybody was talking about how fantastic it was. So I was like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
And I ended up finding a video on him angry and talking about being in the gym and slamming stuff around, and then he was slamming chains around, saying that it was okay to be angry.
Yeah.
So over the past, 14 years, you had the VA, you had society, you had your wife, everybody just telling you that it wasn't okay to be angry, that you had to learn a different way to do that. I don't even know how to explain it, because you can't just explain away anger. It's anger.
Yeah.
And so I was so frustrated with the fact that I had no outlet for the anger that that's what clicked for me. And then when that clicked over for me, I started to find that there was a lot more to the story than just my anger.
Yeah.
There was reasons behind the anger and why I was so frustrated and why I was so angry. And, I mean, so many years of not having any feelings besides anger.
Yes.
And then telling me that I couldn't have anger. So from the time I was a kid, my dad wouldn't allow me to get, you weren't allowed to cry, you weren't allowed to do this, you weren't allowed, you just knew anger.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I knew from my dad. That's what I knew from the Marine Corps. That's how I knew how to be a man, be me. And coming here, I didn't realize what emotions I had inside of me.
Yes.
And where I would end up. And I still don't even know what the hell you whispered in my ear, but I started crying. And I didn't stop for like 3 days. It just kept coming out and coming out. It was insane to actually have feelings, and going through them ranges of feelings, and going through the getting to know what feelings were, and then trying to give them per se to my kids and my family and my wife. I just wanted to give it all to him at once, which was kind of a lot. And when I got back from Warrior Week, the first thing I did was buy them all journals and sat them down and had an individual talk with each one of them and had them. I wanted them to put journal entries in every day, and then we'd talk about them on Sunday in our date.
Yeah.
In our family date.
So we're gonna come back to that, but we're gonna go back right before the decision and when you stepped in, and we're gonna go way before that. Like we're gonna go before we're gonna go behind the fucking scene.
Okay.
And behind the fucking scene is when we're a kid, and when we're a kid, there are events and incidents that takes place.
Right.
And when they take place, we involuntarily adopt certain patterns that are associated to a fucking emotional event that took place in our life. I give you a fucking example. Let's say, dudes that stutter, right? If you look at stuttering, you have to link that to what kind of took place at what point in your life when you started picking this shit up. What emotional charge took place? I don't know, my parents were fighting or my dad threw a fucking pan at my mom. I don't know, right? There's an emotional charge that took place. There was a situation that took place. And right after that, you've adopted a pattern from, whatever you saw. Maybe it was on TV. Maybe it was something you were reading. Maybe it was your bigger brother. Maybe it was your friends. You adopt a pattern, and unconsciously that pattern fucking stays with you. So I want to tie in this specifically to anger. And I want to tie it in specifically from an example this morning, and actually in the past fucking 24 hours. Dude, I went on a fucking rampage with my son last night. It started last night, and it led into this morning. Last night, he got dropped to the office. We were at the office. I was on the computer working on some shit, and he was insisting to get on computer to play some games. And I insisted on him to do his homework, and he insisted back on doing the homework when we're going to go eat pizza, because that's what I told him. We're going to grab some pizza. And he made this argument that, he does better in restaurant environment when he does his homework. That's what he does usually, whatever. So we're back and forth like 15 minutes on this, talking logically, right? Back and forth. And he's 10, so, I give it to him. He's a pretty good fucking negotiator. And so at one point, the logic, I'm not able to beat him logically. Because, number one, I don't have the fucking patience. I want to take care of whatever's fucking's on the computer, not talk to him about this. Right. I just want him to listen, right? So there is a desire for me to fucking listen. He, on the other end, just wants to play, doesn't want to hear anything else. And he wants to talk about it now because he wants to play now.
Right.
This goes back and forth, and I snap. I get angry. I take his fucking school bag. I throw it, and I start acting like a goddamn fucking animal. And that kind of scares him, or in a way just makes him stop.
Yeah.
Then I have satisfaction. I finish my shit. And then in my mind, as I'm finishing my shit, I'm starting to blame, fuck, he wasn't listening, and this, what the fuck. And then after all that is over, I start getting slowly into this place of guilt as I see him sitting on the chair, not saying anything. I'm like, what the fuck? Do I want my son to just fucking sit there and not say anything? What the fuck am I doing? All this is happening inside of 30-minute session.
Right.
And then I go to this fucking place of shame, which is, fuck. How do I fucking erase this now? Right? How do I, dude, I fucking teach this shit. I talk about this shit, and now this is, I'm like, fuck. So anyway, I talk to him. We go to the pizza. He doesn't care. He forgets, right? We have an awesome night. Go to bed. Tomorrow morning, needs to pack up, go to school. He's a bit late, so he's running, and he's he's doing his shit. And I'm like, hey, where's your jacket? He's like, well, it's somewhere at home. I'm like, no. When we can pick you up, let's say you didn't have it, and then after we went to pizza, I didn't see the jacket, so it's not at home. So he started playing the same logical argument.
Right.
That the fucking jacket is at home. But now I know for facts that the jacket is not at home and the jacket is at school. But it's the same fucking logical arguments. We go again at it. And then I'm like, okay, well, go find it upstairs. So he goes upstairs to come back, wakes everybody up. I get fucking angry. And there again, I do the same fucking shit. I throw the bag and I start throwing a fucking fit. I become angry. And then all day, right? I drop him school all day. Like in the car, I was still blaming him. Like, fuck, what are you doing? And then all day, feeling of guilt and shame. So I'm sharing this story with you, number one, to say that this shit is happening every day.
Right.
Like, it's happening every day. There is no perfection in being a father. There's no perfection in being a man. There's no perfection in being a fucking husband. There's no perfection in being a fucking soldier. Like, there is just simply no fucking perfection. There is the simplicity of being shitty, good, and great.
Right.
Shitty is when, like, you panic and things are fucking shitty and they smell just like shit. Good is when you get fucking comfortable. Like, things are comfortable now. Okay, this is a comfort zone. All right, I got this.
Right.
So you become this guy that just... And then great is when you're actually inspiring and when you're actually teaching all the time.
Right.
You can't be teaching from a place of good. If you are, it's false. It's misleading because you're just comfortable.
Right.
So what are you going to teach people is to stay comfortable. You can't teach greatness from good.
Right.
So in a place where you're great, and this is where the past 4 years I've been as a great dad, I can still be a shitty fucking dad. So why I'm sharing this is I'm tying this all back to how anger is perceived as we grow up and how we're given a checklist of do's and not to do's. And part of that is don't be angry, or at least don't be angry at your parents. Don't be angry at your grandparents. It's okay for you to be angry if someone beats you up. Be angry at him.
Right.
But like there's like this, so there's this confusion that fucking takes place. If anger is a feeling, then okay, I'm not supposed to be angry with my mom and the dad, or I'm not supposed to show my anger. So I sedate my fucking anger as a kid, and then it comes out, all of it, on somebody else, and later in life, I'm still fucking angry at my parents.
Right. And you were never willing to collide with them.
Never. Because you were never given the frame of collision.
Permission, yeah.
So I look at my son now, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna get fucking angry, what if we were to reverse the scenario? What if he would have just get fed up with the logical argument and he would have get angry? How would I react then? I would probably alpha up on him, right?
Right.
And most people would say, yeah, that's the way, they can't really control you and this and that. It's not really about control, man. It's about allowing him to have his experience and his feeling as well. Kids don't get angry because they're pure. We get angry because we have fucking stories.
Right.
And those stories make us angry, so therefore we project our fucking anger. And if kids get angry, that they're probably right. Their anger is fueled by truth. And we're the one fucking ignoring it. So, like, going back to, like, your childhood, does this resonate with you being angry and just not being able to fuel it?
Yeah. There was a couple of times that I did. I actually went toe-to-toe with my dad.
Yeah.
That didn't end very well for me.
Yeah.
But I had one specific one was we were moving to a new house, and we were moving a couch up the stairs.
Yeah.
And at the top of the stairs, there's this corner,
Yeah.
and there's a big bookshelf, so you can't get around the corner. So
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out a way to weasel it up there.
Yeah.
And I had pushed the couch and pinched his fingers, and he pushed the couch on me and pinched my fingers, and
Yeah.
I decided to call him a punk.
Yeah.
And I remember he was at the top of the stairs, I was at the bottom of the stairs, seeing him like Jet Li it up in the air, slide down the couch, and kick me in the chest out the door.
Yeah.
And we were circling in the yard like we were gonna fight.
Yeah.
And I remember very quickly deciding that wasn't probably a very good idea. But there was many times like that growing up that I'd get shut down in more of a matter of fact way, not just kicked out the door.
Yeah.
There was times where my dad and I would yell back and forth, and when I would begin to escalate, that's when it got slapped down real quick for sure.
You know, I remember my dad, and it's somehow it's fucking exact opposite. Is like my dad never got angry with me, and I never got angry with my dad up to now. Like I can't have a fucking close my eyes right now. I can't. I saw my dad fucking angry at my mom. I've seen him angry. Like I can close my eyes. There was a time where he was wearing a fucking mustache, and it was like brutally fucking angry at my mom. But I don't have any memory of him being angry to me. My mom, I have a lot of angry moments of my mom being angry at me and beating me up with like all kind of fucking object, right?
Right.
And so I don't know, right? It's not that it's just attached to, like your parents is who you know. Or whoever that you're with at that time and you're growing, maybe you're not fortunate to have parents and you're in a foster child home. That the people that are there becomes everything that you model.
Right.
Everything that model. So I model a bunch of shit out from my mom. Like I didn't. My anger doesn't come really from my dad because I never seen in him. And around him, I was never angry. But around my mom, there was a lot of anger from her, and that got projected on me, so I could, like, I become my mom every time I'm fucking angry.
Okay.
That's how I see things. And inside of that, when we deal with this idea of anger, whether we process or not, or whatever ways that we learn to do it, there is definitely the following feelings after, which is the blame and then guilt and shame, and we all have this guilt and shame that gets forged into a fucking almost like a fucking like an armor that is around us and we carry for the rest of our life.
Right.
Until we go through a process where a fucking hammer is taken and just breaks the fucking armor, and now you feel like 300 pounds lighter.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I went through a lot of shame and guilt having similar with my kids.
Yeah.
And just realizing that they forgive me and talking to them about it and changing the dynamic of it from the way it used to be, where I didn't have any communication, any conversation with them at all. I would just sit on the couch, watch TV, and then when it was time for punishment, Dad would react, to a point where now I have a conversation with them daily, and we're in constant communication.
Yeah.
To where when it's time for me to be the disciplinarian, it's in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So I've seen it on both sides of the frustration and just explosion, and I still get that way as well. But
so as a kid, you were a witness of multiple fucking explosion, right? One of the incident that you just described, which was your dad like sliding down and just fucking kicking you.
right.
Then you go to the Marine Corps and you serve the country. How long you served?
4.5 years.
4.5 years, and like you go right into the fire zone.
Right.
And obviously, for 4 year and a half, you see fucking explosion, like emotional explosion, physical explosion, all kind of fucking explosion. Talk about those years and what happened to Derek in those years, right? Were you married? Was the kids back home? Like talk about a day in the life of a soldier. You know what I mean? Tell the unspoken, tell the untold, so that if there's any brother listening to this, right, that if you've ever served, you now have a permission to just like give yourself permission to fucking share some shit. And if you have not, well, you have an opportunity to not understand, but at least begin imagining the fucking like how life could be if you were in this situation. And from there, start like just extracting what you can from it. What you can from it that can serve you. So, I mean, that's what we do here, man. Like, we're not going to sit down here and we're going to fucking talk about shit that, oh, yeah, you know, what stays in war stays in war. I was a child of war myself. I've seen horrible fucking shit as a child. From ages of 8 to 10, I've seen what I should have not seen at the age of fucking 8 to 10.
Right.
And so for that period of time, I was grown inside of civil war. I was grown inside of a war that was fucking horrible. Talk about fucking chemical bombs and bombs being dropped on civilians 3-4 times a night while you're fucking sleeping in the middle of the night, and now you have to fucking look at the TV because the alarm goes on, and you have to go under the stairs because if a bomb gets dropped in your fucking house or the neighbor, at least the safest place is under the fucking stair. Like that shit, it's not part of normal growing up. And when we left the country and we went to Canada, I didn't, I never spoke about war again. I didn't talk about, I wasn't, I just suppressed war.
Right.
Suppressed playing with anything that would symbolize war. Suppressed watching war movies. Not until later, I would say around, even inside of Warrior, around 37, 38, and I'm just describing my pattern. The minute I got exposed to Warrior and the minute that we started, working with, soldiers and working with guys that have actually served, then it became suddenly a fucking passion of mine to start, contributing to that as much as I can. And we even started the Navy SEAL funds, and we raised $100,000 for families that were in needs. You were part of that with us, and you've seen the grown of. We've created the Forgotten Warrior Project, where we sponsor a bunch of guys coming in,
right.
And so there was this unconscious desire to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit back here and I start linking it to 30 years ago when I was actually in the fucking war zone and how I left that for 30 years. I leave that for 30 years, I come back and I start serving the people that served, right? So for me, there's a discovery here as well. I don't have the fucking answers, but I know there's a 30 years of sedation that took place. My fears, fears transcended into some other emotion.
Well, and you got to look at the fact that you were 8 to 10 years old. What could you have done to help? And now you have an opportunity to help.
I think that's what it is. I think, fuck yeah, man. I've been trying to fucking solve this puzzle. Say it again.
You were 8 years old and you couldn't help at that point. And now you're in a place where you can actually help and give them an opportunity to do something.
That's so true, because if at 8, I'm just closing my eyes and I'm visualizing what took place, and if at 8-year-old, I would be a witness to the pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I specifically remember one day we went to school and one of the seats, the table and the chairs, was fucking empty. And that was one of the guys where, his house was hit by a bomb. But that wasn't the only guy. In that year, we actually start seeing 2 or 3 empty chairs, empty tables with chairs.
Yeah.
That specific year. And I would come home, cry. And I remember that was the year with my dad packed all our shit and said, we're getting the fuck out of here. We got out. We escaped. It's not like we got out legally. We just had to fucking escape.
Right.
And declare the status of refugee, and that's it. Right. So, but inside of that, if I recall what you just said, if I just visualize the empty tables with the chairs, and how 1 turned into 3, and the pain that caused me, and I couldn't do it. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. First of all, as an 8-year-old, so for me, it's okay, is this normal? Because I haven't seen anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time that I'm 8, right?
Yeah.
So I'm okay, I guess this is it. This is where we live. And there was no media. There was no social media. There was no TV exposing us to another world. There was no education exposing us to another possibility.
Right.
And so that became what we knew. And so inside of that, there was pain, and we didn't know what to do to pain, and maybe cry or whatever the fuck we did as kids. But now that you're talking about 30 years later, right? I leave that. I don't fucking follow anything about war or anything like that. 30 years later, I come back, and I start looking at this shit, and I'm start helping people. And you're fucking right. It's because I couldn't help then. Now I can.
Right.
And what it's been 30 years that I wanted to fucking help. But I've sedated the desire to help because of a fucking story that I'm scared of war or whatever that caused me a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you just give me a fucking gift. I got a massive like inquiry around this to just figure out this fucking confused way of feeling about what took place and how I'm operating now.
Yeah, I went through a lot of the same stuff.
Okay. So like just talk to us, man, like from your experience and what you've experienced on the other side of it.
So the big thing is it's not really taboo, and it's not really left over there. We're not trying to leave it over there. It's the majority of all of our feelings don't hit us until we're back stateside. We're processing things at a different level and a different manner. I mean, it's just you're clicking and moving. I mean, everything's happening. You just keep moving. And I mean, it's a lot like this process. I mean, you're losing people behind.
Mm-hmm.
People are falling off to the wayside, but you're moving forward all the time. You don't stop and try to save somebody. You gotta move. So there's no real tabooness to it. I mean, I'll tell you stories. I mean, the day in Iraq, we were heading up into Baghdad. It was at the 8-6 Northing. We were heading up in, and one of my lieutenants right before that had been hit with 2 RPGs. And he got life flighted out. So they attached another lieutenant to us who was from TOWS, and we were with scouts. And he come up and he was just excited as excited gets. And he had these bright blue eyes. I'll never forget them. They're just, I mean, almost as bright as the squares in here. They were, but they like had a gray tint to them. They're just very, very distinctive. And he was so excited to be a part of what we were doing because he'd been a little bit further behind and didn't realize he'd been hearing about the things that we were doing because we were the forward reconnaissance for everything. We were in front of everybody. Basically, we called ourselves worm on a hook. I mean, we were bait.
Mm-hmm.
So we're heading up into southern Baghdad, and we're going to make the loop around to Saddam City.
Yeah.
And it was April 2003. And I believe it was April 4th. I just cut off.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead, keep going.
I hit something.
That's fine. Just keep telling the story. Yeah,
There it
that's good.
goes.
Yeah.
So April 4th,
Yeah.
we're driving up and we get attacked by it was militias. They'd hired a bunch of militias and they were all in black pajamas bouncing between the houses. And they had they jumped from roof to roof, and they had some sandbags set up that they were, some fighting positions that they were shooting at us from. And I remember hearing over the radio, Scout 6 is down.
Mm-hmm.
So I look back because his truck's right behind mine, and I just see his gun spinning. So he had a 50 cal on top, and in the turrets, then we didn't have any armor. We stuck out from our waist up.
Mm-hmm.
So you just had a little handle that you'd pull up to turn your gun.
Mm-hmm.
So he had the turret loose to traverse back and forth. And his gun was just spinning because that thing wasn't locked down.
Yeah.
So I'm looking down, trying to get one of my guys to jump up in the gun. I get that guy up in the gun, and I hear somebody saying, check on the other truck. And I had my driver pull up next to his as we're in the firefight, bouncing through the borrow pit.
Yeah.
And they say, so I jumped from my truck to his truck and climbed down in. And climbing down in that truck, I didn't know what I was gonna see. I didn't think. I figured either he was knocked out or he had been completely blown up, or I was expecting to see just gore all over the place. And I looked down in the turret, and he's slid down into the passenger rear seat, and his feet are still up on the gunner's platform. And he's just laying there, and you don't see he looks like he's just asleep, like he's knocked out. So I jump down in the turret, and I'm yelling at the guy to check him out, see what's going on with him. And he's froze. Everybody's froze in the truck. So I'm trying to get everybody present and get everybody to wake up, you know. And I reach down, and I'm pulling on his flak jacket, and I'm telling him, open up his flak jacket, see if he's hit. So he gets the flak jacket open, and he's feeling around, and I'm down there feeling around and jumping back up in the gun and trying to remain in the fight. And we can't find anything on him. So I reach down and I pop the buckle on his Kevlar, and everything just fell out. He had been shot in the head. And I was so in the moment of the firefight, I was yelling at somebody to do CPR on him. I mean, there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
But I'm yelling at somebody to do CPR on him, and his legs are wrapped around mine, just twitching.
Yeah.
For about an hour. We're going back in retrograde and hitting another road and trying to hit it from another angle. And his legs literally stayed wrapped around mine, twitching for about an hour. And then we took him out. One of my good friends, John, he came over and was rinsing out the back of the truck. And we put him in his Gore-Tex bag, the liner that goes over your sleeping bag. And we carried him to a life flight. It was pretty intense.
What do you do as a soldier in the process? I mean, when you come off the fire and when you're actually wrapping the body and all that shit, like, are guys in tears, or do you go in tears alone at night, or you never go into, like, what happens to the soldier?
At that point, there wasn't a lot of feeling to it. It was, like I said, the feeling didn't come until a little while after. It was, I guess that's kind of what you're looking for. It's we started going in retrograde, and where it all poured in on me was something that didn't even have to do with the war. It was, I had called my dad, and he didn't answer because we finally got service to where we'd never had cell phones over there. So they got these sat phones when we were in retrograde. So I had called my dad to see what's going on back home and let him know that I'd made it. I was in retrograde. I was coming home. And he didn't answer, so then I had called my mom, which they were divorced at the time.
Yeah.
And my mom starts telling me about all of her problems that she has at home.
Okay.
Like that she's getting divorced and this and that. And I mean,
doesn't
even really acknowledge that
you're coming home.
I'm getting shot at for a couple months, and then now I'm coming home.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we're getting off the phone, she goes, "Oh, by the way, your grandma died," and hung up. So that's my dad's mom.
Yeah.
The one who was so proud of me for going to the Marine Corps, and me dressing in my dress blues to meet her after my graduation. You know, it was to surprise her, I guess.
Yes.
And to hear it that way from somebody who didn't really give a shit about my grandma was tough for me. So that started to open up a whole bunch of feelings. And then I started thinking about, well, what about his family? You know, who's telling his family? Where's, you know, or is it just a couple of Marines knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, is your son's dead?"
Yes.
I mean, who's there to comfort them? Who's there to do anything for them? Because they're not trained in the way that we are to deal with it.
Yes.
And thank God. I mean, if they were trained the way that we were, there'd be a whole numb world. But they just, so that's what really started to affect me. And then I hit a moment where all I could see every night when I closed my eyes was him propped up on his elbows and his eyes staring at me, because that's how I set him down on the ground so we could put him up in the bag. And he was, you know, the stiffness was setting in, the rigor mortis, however you say it, but
yeah.
he was getting stiff. So his arms were stuck, cocked back, and he was just laid back, and his eyes were looking just straight at me. So it was. Yeah. So I seen that for years and years. That's the vision that I seen every night when I closed my eyes. You hear about these guys that are having these visions of the people that they killed and this, that, and the other thing. But this, so I thought I was extra broken because I wasn't seeing them visions. I was seeing the vision of my lieutenant dead, laying there every night. The
twitching of the legs, was that something that hunted you or whatever, that like just because the way you describe this is this is not a sudden death. This is not, oh, this person is shot. Okay. You know, but this is like a person's life, like leaving, the person's soul's leaving. Yeah. And that hour just seems like, I can imagine, not that I felt it, but I can imagine that hour just seems like fucking years, man.
Yeah, it seemed like days. Just it seemed like it was never going to end.
At that moment, like, or even after, because who knows? At that moment, you're still under fucking shocks. You know what I mean? This is no one has predicted these scenarios,
right?
You know, I mean, there are conversations about like this is going to be the most horrible space that you're ever going to see, but not having a script, and just like yourself, like you said, jumping in a truck and not knowing what to see.
Mm-hmm.
When you came back and when it was all over, for you to come back and be at home, like, I mean, how the fuck do you just put all this shit in a bag and close it up and then just be at home without like going to the bag and constantly bringing it out?
Well, it's kind of funny because when I was talking with Nick earlier today, he actually brought something up, and I had a big revelation with him.
Yes.
And we were talking about the label of PTSD. So you and I have talked about this quite a bit.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that I had hit it. I was trying to hide that I had PTSD because to me it was weakness. It was everybody. I didn't want people to judge me. I had a vision of guys with PTSD living in gutters and my uncle living in a VA home.
Yeah.
That's what I envisioned PTSD. So when I was labeled PTSD, I did everything in my power to make sure that people didn't know. I was scared.
Yes.
I didn't understand that I could still function. So I went to a whole nother extreme of the businessman where that's where I found my drive and my purpose was inside of work. I put everything to work, and I was a workaholic. I would literally work till I couldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And then drink, hit the strip club, go to bed. I mean, there was multiple different scenarios. I mean, before I had come here, it got to a point where I wasn't going out. I was more, because now I had a status.
Yeah.
I had developed a status, so now I couldn't be that guy that was going out and creating all this chaos, essentially, and fighting and drinking and sleeping with other women.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that anymore. I had to uphold this status. So I would go home, and instead of taking the aggression out on these guys that I didn't know at the bar, I would yell and scream and treat my family like crap.
Yeah. So it comes down to, I mean, if you look at a pattern, it's like, hey, action, 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 action. You come back here, like, okay, the only thing I know is fucking action.
Right.
So action, 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 action. Give me fucking action in work. Like, you know, let me sell some shit. Let me feel this. Okay, what's the next sell? What's the next opportunity? And then I could drink some shit. Let me keep myself entertained. Strip clubs or whatever the fuck. It's just entertainment, right? It's just keeping, and the place that actually slows everything down for you, which is home.
Right.
You just don't want to be there because slowing down opens the space for you to reach out in that bag and start bringing some of the shit you don't want to think about.
Right.
So you bring action at home.
Yeah.
So that you don't find a space, you know, like, so the whole problem becomes slowing down and being okay to be alone.
Right.
By yourself, because that's space.
And that's where I had hit the point of where I was calling my life insurance to figure out if, because I had PTSD, if I killed myself, would it still pay my family?
I remember that conversation. And you come on the phone. I specifically remember that conversation. You're like, dude, I mean, I'm at the point where I don't know. So what I heard and what I've seen at Warrior, and we're going to talk about that at Warrior Week, what happened specifically. But you and I talked about like this, like there's a man, and then this man has actually you've actually almost accepted the fucking label. Like, you've almost accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
In some extent, you did accept it. Like, okay, I have PTSD, so PTSD equals blah, 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 blah. Whatever label society put on it, I'm going to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hide it, but I know I can't hide it from myself. So I know I'm fucked up. I know I may cause some damage to someone according to the label. I'm not going to let anyone know, but I can't live with this too long.
Right. So
because I'm afraid of myself.
You lie to yourself, and then eventually the lies catch up and they bleed out into everywhere, and it.
So however you want to look at this, brother, at the end of the day, you've taken the exact pattern that you needed to take, which is you felt it, you've experienced it, you've accepted the label, the story, whatever, and all was left was just to fucking eliminate it because it wasn't serving you.
Right.
But you couldn't figure out how to eliminate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you come to Warrior Week, and you know, that first night in the pit, you go deep and you see some shit. Specifically, remember that night. What do you remember from that night, man? Like, what do you, like, where were you taken emotionally?
So it was basically back to that moment in the truck. And it was, you know, like, I don't know how many details we can get into about it.
However you want. I mean, we don't talk about the evolutions, but I mean, if you want to talk about, just talk about whatever you want, man.
Well, when we went through an evolution of letting things go.
Yep. Burning the past.
Yep. Yeah. That was, I let that go. And that night was the first night that I had slept more than 3 hours in 14 years. I slept 6 hours that night.
And you guys don't get that many hours to sleep. So you actually banked 100%. But man, that's solid.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
the armor was fucking, like, the shield was broken. Like, the hammer you took the fucking hammer and broke the shield.
Well, it was crazy because, you know, going through, I'd come in with the hardened military. None of your evolutions are gonna do shit for me. I'm just gonna I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna knock this log PT out. I'm gonna jump in and out of the trash can. And I remember specifically, you looking at me and shooting me with a paintball because I had told somebody they only have a limited amount of time that they can do this. They've got a time limit. They're gonna go through these things and then we'll be done. No matter what you do, it's never going to be right. And I got shot with a paintball. Then we got pulled aside, and I ended up all on an island by myself, screaming at the water.
Yeah. So sleeping 6 hours after fucking 14 years, man.
Yeah.
Sleeping 3 hours, like, dude, that wasn't healthy for your body.
No. I pounded usually anywhere between 6 and 12 Red Bulls a day.
6 and 12 Red Bulls a day?
Mm.
Shit. Yeah, it's to keep you.
Yeah, just to function.
Yeah, that's not good for the body. Yeah, so dude, you come in. I remember that night you liberated yourself, and the last day, you've eliminated the fucking label. I mean, it really fucking clicked. Garrett was in the room. I was in the room. The brothers were in the room. We're all around you. And you went through the evolution called the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the birth of the mirror evolution inside of Warrior Week. And you just went back home with a different perspective.
Completely different.
Just a different perspective. So you didn't change.
No.
There was no transformation.
Same guy.
The only thing you fucking got out of this whole entire process was a different perspective.
Right.
But this was a perspective that was serving you. So talk to us about how you took this perspective and how this started like serving you at home. Like first your wife, then all of your kids one by one, because you have 5, man.
Well, it took a while.
Yeah, I know. But you have a solid family. So it's not like it was just you and mom in the basement.
Right. It took a while. It took a lot of showing up because, I mean, everybody was 100% on the thought that it wasn't going to follow through. It wasn't gonna keep happening. And, but it was just constantly concentrating on making sure that I hit it every day. And having that structure back in my life is what really helped make everything easier. Yes. Because I had a checklist. I had, Marine Corps. You wake up, you put your boots on, you make your bed, you go out, you run your PT, you come back, you shower up, you get ready, you go do whatever you're doing for that day.
Yeah.
So having that back in my life where I wake up in the morning, I go run my PT, I get ready for the day, I'm preparing my mind for the day is a new thing. And we'd write 5-paragraph orders, we'd set up, different schemes, different stuff that we would set up and do, but just having that structure back in my life was one of the biggest things that made the click for me and made me refocus and have a drive every day and be and just know where I was going instead of just showing up and waiting for something to happen. I was ahead of the game. Yes. So staying ahead of the game at work came to staying ahead of the game at home, to having the courage to collide and say, hey, I've been here this amount of time, I'm not going to work weekends anymore.
Yeah.
And for my family, they were completely blown away. That was like one of the big clicking moments.
That was a big move, bro.
Yeah, Saturday's a big day in the car business, and Dad's staying home. What? Yeah. He's not calling. He's not checking. He's
nothing.
He's put his phone up. He's engaged. We're doing all these things, and that's pretty huge. I mean, that really.
You started journaling with your kids, as you were talking about at the beginning of it. Yeah. And how did that go? Like talk about some of that experience with your kids, man. Because they have the best way to teach us some shit.
Yeah. So my son was drawing a lot of pictures, and he's 6. he mostly wanted me to write stuff, and then he would rewrite it. And but it was time together. And one of the big things that I learned was my daughter. So I had no idea that my daughter was struggling with somebody bullying her. And it really frustrated me that she didn't have the courage, not have the courage, but didn't feel like I was a safe place for her to come talk to about that. And before, I mean, she might have told me, and I wouldn't even registered. I probably would have said, hang on a minute, I'm watching TV. But it had completely just blew me away that she was confiding in and talking to her counselor at school before she talked to me.
Yeah.
And she actually wrote this in her journal, so she did bring it to me and share it with me. So it was intense to feel that, especially coming from the place where I was completely afraid to talk to her, and I was like we had discovered, I had pushed her away because she had woke me up that night, and I had ended up slamming her up against the wall, and I subconsciously, consciously pushed her away, and then blamed it on her. Oh, she's scared of me now. She doesn't want anything to do with me. And when I finally talked to her about that incident, she didn't even remember it. She had no recollection of it, and she couldn't understand why I was pushing her away.
Yeah.
So that was another intense conversation that we got through the journal.
Your wife, right? Do you remember our call? There was a call that we had, and it was a hot seat. You were on a hot seat on a virtual call, and I fucking yelled, and I got mad, and I screamed, and I said, like, dude, like, your wife is the partner. Your wife is the one that you're gonna co-create this journey with. And I was specifically talking about the certified trainer and how you were going to go out there and teach, and I said, have you ever thought about like having her involved in this? Because obviously she has been the backbone of everything for you. Like, right. Dude, like we on that call, like, we laid it out. It's all right. Well, dude, the reality is the real warrior has been your wife. Like, behind the scene, like 5 kids and your fucking ass being whatever, right? Action guy. She's kept it all fucking together because she knew that one day the king would return fucking home.
Exactly.
And to live with a queen like that in a castle, and the man that you've become, and have her as a partner to build whatever the fuck you want to. Build a business, build the most epic relationship, build a charity, build a fucking soccer team, build a baseball team, build whatever, build a church, to have her as a builder next to you.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fucking feel?
Oh, it feels great. Just like in this transition that we're making to Arizona.
Yeah.
It's something that would have never happened before, where I would be going to Arizona and picking us out a house.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm FaceTiming her through houses, and it was kind of funny because she was talking to me about it yesterday. Her mom had called her, and she had said, oh, Derek's down picking us out a house. And she goes, he's what? And she goes, yeah, he's picking us out a house. And she goes, you trust him to pick you out a house? And she's like, absolutely. I mean, because she had a house in mind, and I went in it, and the house was great, and there was a lot of things that we could do with it, but there was something in the house that made, I don't have very many allergies. I'm allergic to morphine.
Yeah.
And there was something in there that was making my eyes itch and my nose. And she's like, well, do they have a dog? I was like, yeah, they have a dog, but I'm not allergic to dogs. One of our kids is allergic to dogs.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, maybe if they just shampooed the carpets and got rid of, a bunch of stuff. And I was like, And then I was thinking, well, if I'm going to go in and spend this kind of money and buy this house on a hope that's that
shampoo will take it away.
Shampoo's going to take it away.
Fuck that.
It doesn't make sense. And she's like, well, yeah, you're right. Because, I mean, we go put all new carpet in or whatever, and it still doesn't go away. You're stuck. But so it's just pretty amazing that she trusts me to be able to do that and trust my judgment in stuff.
It's pretty amazing to see you in your communication that way with your wife.
Yeah.
Dude, like just like communicating my shit. Back in the days, it was like there was no cooperation.
No, none at all.
It was like, hey, checking in. It's like a fucking like you point A to point B, and like fucking checking in. Yeah, it's like a check-in call. It's not
just like
hey,
you did when you were a kid and mom said check in.
Yeah, it's not hey, what's up, baby?
Yeah,
it's basically check-in.
Right.
And today that's obviously different, and you're living that way. But I want to talk about one particular event where you've truly felt the power behind what you really want. And this is the ultimate test for you, which your wife has witnessed and your 5 kids have witnessed, and they will grow to know this. And that is the following. You have an offer. You have a huge offer.
Oh, yeah.
You have an offer. You have an offer that comes in and that most men will not fucking refuse.
Yeah.
And talk about that decision, because that needs to be fucking written in history. That needs to be told in this conversation right here. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you've been watching this podcast so far, open your fucking ears and hear this. This is a reality. This is not a false decision. This is not a false story. This is a true story that took place from a man that has been in fucking the places that you and I have not been, and maybe some of you have been, fucking on the other side of the hell, and coming back and building a life, almost taking his life away to making this decision. This is something that the world needs to fucking know and understand the power of once we become clear on what's priority in our life and how fucking love is this secret weapon of mass fucking building. Like it builds. It's not mass destruction. It's mass building.
Yeah.
Like it's just a secret motivator to fucking move anyone and anybody. And so I'm going to go ahead and like just allow you to tell the story.
Right. So I've been in the car business, like we talked about, for 14 years, and I've been trying to build to this level of income. That was always the main motivator in my mind was, I've got to hit this level. Okay, next year I got to hit this level. I got to hit this level, and so on. And I had an opportunity where a company had called and offered me 1.2 a year plus bonuses.
No, 1.2 million.
And so that
hold on again. Repeat that again.
1.2. So that
million.
Was like 4 times my income plus bonuses.
At that time.
At that time, yeah.
Yes.
And
so 1.2 plus bonuses.
Plus bonuses.
And that would have brought you to what?
Well, around 1.5.
1.5. So 1.2 guaranteed, and 1.5 with bonuses.
Right.
For 1 year.
1 year.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there trying to process it, and the first person I talked to is Shane, the owner, right there. I'm like, hey, I got this offer, and he's like, take it. If you don't take it, tell me who's calling. I'm going to take it. It's like, so just to have that, to be able to just be able to tell somebody that you're working for and have them have your back and say, hey,
take that shit.
Right.
Shane is also a graduate of Warrior Week, a great fucking guy. So
yeah. And we went, so I went home and I was trying to process it and talk to my wife, and it wouldn't sit with me. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, well, this is like everything I dreamed of. I get to get away from the cold. I don't want winter anymore. I'm go down in the warm. I'm gonna sunbathe and get paid. That's paid and laid. That's what we're going for it, right? And it wouldn't sit, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I started to process that I had built so much with my family that I was not willing to risk losing time, because this job was going to take a lot of my time.
7 days almost, huh?
Yeah, it would have been 7 days a week for sure.
Yep.
And I started to realize that what I had built was I couldn't put a price tag on it.
It would actually. So here's the reality, right? Like, you have to imagine the scenario. You're sitting, and somebody knocks at your door, say, "What's up, bro? We have an offer for you that's 4 times of what you're currently making." So visualize what you're making right now, whatever you're making right now, whatever your level of production is. Visualize an offer on the table that says 4 times that guaranteed. And we're not talking about like some shitty verbal offer. You had that in written.
Mm-hmm.
All that was left for you was to fucking sign it.
Right.
And the game begins. Okay, so continue.
So I go through the process of still processing it, and I still hadn't said no until we came here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at, was it WarriorCon 2?
Yeah, it was an event here.
Yeah. WarriorCon 2, I'm sitting, and I go out, and I talk to a couple different people about it, and they're all like, yeah, take the money. And I couldn't understand why they couldn't feel where I was coming from. Like, I didn't even want to have to say it. I wanted them to see it and feel it.
Yeah.
And I walk up to Sam. He's in the middle of his salad. And I had told him the offer, and it was just a completely different look than anyone else had given me. Like he could almost feel the sadness inside of me. And he goes, well why aren't you taking it? And I was like, well, I don't know. Why am I not taking it? So then we sat there and kind of and talked through it of where I was at. And that night I ended up turning it down.
That was a good talk, man. I remember that.
Yeah.
The salad was shitty. Like, I was disappointed in the fucking served salad.
Yeah.
I wanted some chicken breast and some, like, they were serving pork and some fucking fish, and I was pissed off as a motherfucker. And then you come and sit down.
Yeah.
With this news, I'm like, why the fuck you're not offering it? So I was already triggered by the fucking salad. But inside of that, we had a great conversation. And the conversation was simple, man. It is what it is right now. And it needs to be said, and it needs to be known, is that for 14 years, you operated in a place where you've just given whatever version of yourself that was left over after all the actions. After all the actions at work and everything else, after that entertainment, whatever that was left, it was what you had for your wife and your kids, which at that time wasn't much because all your energy was just spent somewhere else.
Right.
And inside of that, you were also carrying a lot of heaviness with this whole story of what took place in war, and that was taking much of your energy, a lot of your fucking cognitive energy. Realistically, bro, there wasn't much of you that was actually brighting and shining on your kids and your wife.
No.
And whatever it was out of it, it was enough for them to just feed of it, and they were just staying and happy, right? You get a taste of what you can actually impact and what family you can actually have as you operate in the best place of your life. Right. Having the routines, being clear, being connected with your wife, having a wife where you can actually build a life with, not just fucking live with, having the kids where you're connected and emotionally you are in their life, they are in your life. And that is a whole new window of life and purpose in which in the past was not open as big for the light to shine in.
Right.
And now Dad, the king, opens up and the window and the fucking sun is pouring into the family and everybody's growing emotionally. and you have been a witness of that for a year, and it didn't matter if it was fucking 1.7 million or 1.5 million. It could have been fucking 10 million. It could have been 10 million. There's no fucking way. There's no fucking way you would have accepted that, because that would have mean I would close the window in exchange for 10 million, and that would have been equal to a fucking bullet in your head, straightforward. The guilt and shame of that would have caused you to fucking put a bullet in your head, because you have been there where you wanted all along for 14 years, you wanted this window. And yet you just didn't know how to fucking open the window. It's as simple as that. You had to eliminate the story that this window is locked. Once you eliminated the story that the window is not locked, then you push gradually, you open the goddamn fucking window, you allowed your light to shine upon your family. So it didn't fucking matter, was it 10 million or 20 million or 1.2 million, realistically, 4 times. Right. Yes, sure, there's prosperity on the other side because you could do a bunch of shit with your family, but what's the fucking point when you're not there to shine and all they want is for you to shine?
Well, not just that, the integrity of it all, because I would have made him a whole bunch of promises that I couldn't have kept in order to do that. And
the guilt on that, undeniably fucking paralyzing the rest of your life.
Right.
But what a beautiful path. They say the most difficult decisions are the decisions that actually pivot the direction of our lives.
Right.
And look at the direction of your life ever since that decision. Dude, you're moving to Arizona from fucking,
Right, opening up my own deal.
Opening up your own deal.
Yeah.
Pursuing your own way.
Yeah.
It's the Derek way. The Warriors way helped you live the Derek way, and now you're living Derek way. And Warriors way is just the foundation that allows Derek to live the way.
Helps me operate day to day. I mean.
So, I look at this. You're a man of war.
Yeah.
I'm a child of war. And deep down inside, today you can sit here, and I can sit here too, and say, although the war within is not fucking over, but I can tell you we won some major fucking battles.
Yeah, we did.
And we're at peace right now. But we know for sure that the war within never fucking ends.
Nope. The second that you think it does, it creeps up and attacks you again.
Well, that's what happened to me this morning and last night.
Right.
That's the war within. Well, for 4 years, I live the Warriors way. I teach the Warriors way. And I live in the greatness of being a dad. And inside of that, I become the most shitty dad within 24 hours twice. That's the proof that the war within never fucking ends. The old self, he's always fucking there.
Yeah.
And the minute I believe it, like you say, it's done. He takes over. The minute I believe he's not there. But if I acknowledge that he's there, and time to time, I can be a shitty man. I can be a shitty husband. I can be a shitty father. I can be a shitty man. I can be a shitty leader. If I don't acknowledge that, then all I'm fucking searching is this imaginary game of perfection that doesn't exist. I'm chasing something that is telling me to fucking fail every single time I chase it.
Yeah, that's why I end up stacking myself at least once a week, because I went a whole month without stacking myself, and I ended up in the pit.
Yes. You're not the only one, by the way. You're not the only one confessing this, so that's all right. But man, what a pure conversation.
Yeah, it was great.
Like, what a conversation of the truth, right? The truth of what make us operate the way we operate, and ultimately the patterns and behaviors that we adopt unconsciously. Even in war, man, you borrowed a bunch of fucking patterns and behavior there based on emotional charge.
Right.
Like, there is no fucking doubt. But then once you recognize the pattern, then change is fucking easy. And it's not that we want change. All we want is to become the self, who we are. Who we are, because who we are is fucking beautiful. Who we are, we can love ourselves unconditionally. But because we adopt all these fucking retarded patterns, or whatever patterns they are, because we adopt these, then we operate differently.
Right, because we're operating around the armor.
The armor. So what a beautiful conversation. Thanks for being on the show with us, man. This was an amazing fucking call. And if anybody has been watching this and you're still on this call and you're still on this podcast, you're still on this version of the podcast being broadcasted in video style, then ask yourself, was there anything inside of this conversation that actually impacted you? And if it did, know that you have a duty to pass this on to another man. To simply forward this podcast and say, hey, listen, man, I listened to some shit here, and this shit is fucking real. Like, I think you can benefit from this. Pay it forward, pass it forward. You can find more details at warriorweeknow.com. Inside of that, there's videos, audios, there's texts, versions of all the episodes. This is episode number 25, and there'll be more coming in. So you can find all the details at warriorweeknow.com, and also by searching Warrior Week inside of iTunes and as well as Google Play. Thanks for being with us.